Good afternoon, everybody, and it is a beautiful afternoon. We've not been able to say that for quite some time. And on behalf of the Fishtown District, welcome to one of another series of working groups regarding our master plan with ISA architects. As you know, we brought in ISA to help us really plan for the future growth of this corridor, not just looking into beautification and little things like that, but how do we enhance and ignite certain areas that need be, make them more efficient, more customer friendly, and promote, most importantly, accessibility and connectivity from us to the thousands of people that come in and out of here. And Brian and Deb from ISA have done such a great job. They are dedicated, they are passionate about Fishtown. We're lucky to have them. So today, we've had a working group with Front and Girard. We've also had one with Frankfurt and Lehigh. So now we're focusing on today Front and Cecil B. Moore, which has a unique kind of standing in the community and has its own unique set of issues, not bad ones, but ones that I think we can really work with. The way we're going to work it today is that we do with all our working groups. We're going to turn it over to Brian and Deb to kind of give some background, some ideas, and some concepts. So we're going to keep everybody muted. Then we'll open it up for questionings towards the end. So Brian and Deb, the floor is yours.
Great. Thanks, guys. I do want to also just point out that not to flaunt how many ISAers are on the call, but Matt Mayberry and Calvin Vanoy, who are both here, if you see cats on power lines in our drawings or every transformer hanging from a pole somewhere, it might be due to the fact that Matt and Calvin drew it. So anyway, it's good to have them with us. So I think we'll just go through a kind of quick interjection here on maybe where we've been, and then get right to it with the conversation at Cecil B. Moore. Share here. So some of you may have heard this little kind of song and dance before, so I'll make it quick. But our firm's in the Crane Arts Building. We were the first tenant in the Crane Arts Building in 2005 when, you know, the neighborhood was I don't know, seemingly on the edge of something, and all of a sudden is kind of in the middle of something. And you know, the neighborhood is kind of close to our hearts, and how it's really driven, you know, community and creativity. And I think part of the great art, food, drink, nightlife, experimental brand of the city that we are really you know, happy to be a part of. And part of our kind of mission here working with the bid is to really kind of come at looking to kind of keep sort of Fishtown expanding, you know, making it more inclusive, making it more, you know, community friendly, hopefully getting a kind of post-pandemic economic wave going, but to really stay kind of true to its vibe, which we think is really special and very much about this kind of bootstrapping creativity and making and kind of doing, which we're excited about. So when we first started into this, we just grabbed, and this is not meant, by the way, to turn everybody off because we didn't include their business, but we just sort of grabbed a few things. Maybe these speech bubbles are really important, right? That we think this was sort of our working board, right? Of like what maybe Fishtown is about. And I think some of these really kind of resonate in the moment as well, and maybe point to a bright future of how it is something that can constantly be churning new ideas and be expanding its fold, you know, into neighborhoods around it, and you know, the city, and, you know, frankly, the world at large. Just to think a little bit about some things we've been doing for the bid. I mean, we're not going to dwell on this, but we did spend some time looking at the document and kind of reorganizing it a little bit to really see what the breadth is, and it's really pretty substantial. And, you know, I think our work's been a little more focused on the two middle categories, the kind of sort of blue and green, the blue kind of representing, I don't know, like things and objects and improvements you might see that are under the kind of bids, you know, purview, and then the kind of green being the sort of, programming that goes along with that enhances it and occupies it. And then the resources, advocacy, engagement, and networking, which is along the edges, are the sort of softer things that help to kind of lubricate the sort of financing and the activity around these. So it kind of helped us just to get our heads around the different layers of the mission. And I think as we move toward a more formalized document where all of this work will kind of go into, I think we'll come back and kind of be able to use this to good effect. So, as we just to give you a sort of short sort of insight into how we kind of got to focusing on these three intersections, Girard, Lehigh, and Cecil B. Moore. As we first started to look at the kind of geography of the bid, you can see it is sort of these three corridors: the front, Frankfurt, and kind of Girard, trio. And I think, one of the things that really emerged in our kind of initial research was, I mean, when I think of Philadelphia, I think a lot of people think of it. You think about a pretty stable grid. I think we take it for granted that if you're in the Northern Liberties, Fishtown, Kensington zone, it's a grid that gets pretty funky with some diagonals and has a tendency to be the place where you can actually get lost. But if you think about the vast majority of the city, it's very kind of predictable. And so we were really struck just by looking at these three corridors that they're not creating 90-degree intersections, and they're not the sort of normal thing we're used to. And we thought that was a really intriguing sort of physical characteristic of the neighborhood, and really, started to think about some of the really interesting zones like south of Girard, where there's just like a ton of space that's up for grabs. That really neck down area between Front and Frankfurt, if you think like Thompson, Master, where almost it becomes like a one big street, right? We've been talking to other groups about the L as almost the kind of like the sort of hidden street that is kind of emerging now in a different way than Frankfurt, which has been kind of out there for a while. But that those two streets together really create a really awesome kind of experience that I think it's exciting that we're able to kind of think about that with you guys. So this map, again, just the sort of three corridors, and then showing all of the bid businesses along them here. And then, we've been thinking a lot about, it's not just about the corridors, but it's about all of the things that network together here. The east-west streets that kind of connect through them. We started to look at, some of the open space areas, thinking about one of the things that's really on our mind is that new, really wonderful park on Master that's just off, Front. I guess it's this one here, that really, these are some of the things that as people experience Fishtown, it's not just about the things directly on the corridor, but it's the things that are off the corridor. And when all those things start to operate together, I think that's where you really get the kind of that kind of urban sort of street life vibe that Philly at large is good at producing, and I think some of these more corridor-rich areas really do well with. So this led us to the first big light bulb for us in trying to take this on in a way that's maybe less typical than putting some banners up on a street and highlighting it as a kind of corridor, was this idea of intersections, which I think really does come out of the funny grid arrangement of the area. And we had some fun just like really looking at the ridiculous variety of intersections where these are not four-way stops by any measure. And it's really cool. I think it's probably certainly if we thought about Passyunk Avenue, you'd probably have a similar kind of thing as the diagonal moves through. But I think this sort of collection of intersections along these corridors was exciting. And so we, graphically and programmatically got interested in these shapes. And we went through really all of the major intersections. I think this might even be sort of a partial catalog of the Frankfurt Front and sort of Girard intersections, where we really looked at each one and began to draw out some of its unique components. And I think this will be an ongoing thing that we can continue to work on. But as we worked with Mark and Kay to figure out like how do we get into this, we wanted to identify three that maybe represent kind of sort of typical but also important conditions. The first one was at Front and Girard, where we're just giving you guys a little bit of a flavor of kind of some of the things we were thinking about, which is really sort of a major portal to the whole zone and really invites people from the train up the Front Street corridor certainly impacts the intersection that we're talking about today, actually, which is something we're also very interested in, is the linkage between these intersections and kind of getting people around. So thinking about signage and program, we're imagining an interesting lighting installation here potentially. And we were also, our kind of last one was up at, Frankfurt and Lehigh, which again has some really great players like, the co-op, and there's a major new development that looks like is going to happen here on the right, which we're just sort of alluding to. But, there's also some gas stations and some tire shops, and we wanted to have some fun with, like, we think that's a cool thing about Fishtown, is these things that don't always go together come together, which I think is really kind of a virtue. And so trying to play with some of the opportunities there, and not to sanitize, but to kind of like capture some of the realness. And so the little like inflatable sort of stick figure here was, we're looking for almost like a kind of like event for each intersection, or an object, or that aren't all the same but are kind of unique to it. So we thought it was kind of funny how the inflatable guy looked a little bit like the intersection logo, and again looking for these kinds of curiosities. So Cecil be more, I think so. We've got some initial thoughts, but really the purpose of these working sessions is to let you guys react to some of the possibilities and challenges and opportunities that you have found doing business here. And so we'll just review what we've done here initially, and then don't take this as a kind of finished product. There's some proposals here to get our imaginations running, but we certainly want to be able to hear from you guys and your thoughts. I mean, I think that as you look at these maps, obviously the L is in play here, and it's really, it's kind of intriguing how the L feels here. I think it, I feel like it gets a little further off the ground, and it kind of opens up, and it's not quite the sort of narrow kind of corridor. Part of it's that there's open land on each side, which probably isn't going to be there forever, but you can also see, and I think that's one of the major things, is there are some sites around the intersection which are potentially in play. I know the site north of Cecil B. Moore, the northwest corner of Front Street, and you can refer to the one on the kind of drawing on the left to think about the cardinal directions, but that upper left corner we know is being looked at, which is going to be transformative. I actually think the corner of Columbia on the northeast side has also been in play. I think we've seen an RFP come across our desk in the last couple of years on that. I don't know the status of it, but I think there's been some thinking there. So there are a couple of big pieces that are in play. But then, of course, you've got, I think, you've got Evil Genius Brewing up sort of halfway on the block. You have the International, which I think we really see as like the hub of the hinge of the whole intersection right now. Particularly now that they've got that sort of snappy outdoor space happening, and there's some like sort of programming of the lot. I think there's some energy up there. The Honeygrow Test Kitchen, which is still there, Mark, right? I feel like I saw like a lease sign out there recently. I'm assuming that's not for Honeygrow. It was maybe for like a smaller space.
For the test kitchen?
Well,
where Honeygrow is. They're selling.
Yeah, right. No, where Honeygrow is. Yeah.
It's selling the building.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, they're selling the building?
Yeah, it's up for sale.
Okay. So changes in the air.
Changes in the air.
In a couple different directions. Yeah. So also just to kind of give you a sense of the sort of street section here, and looking at kind of some of the dimensions of the corridor, and you can see the L side on front, and you can see kind of this is actually cutting, that sort of Cecil B. Moore section, I think, is cutting through the International to the left, and then through the parking lots to the right. So you can kind of get a sense of that openness that's there right now. Here's the shape. I think we do like this idea that this place, or this intersection, or this coming together of these streets, really, does, we kind of like the idea of including Hope Street as part of its vibe, and that it's really, because of this broadening triangle that kind of happens there. And so this was sort of the working plan we've been using. You can see that key up there on the right: signage, vendor pop-up, planters, bikes, art mural, future development. So these are kind of the different layers that we've been using consistently. And so I think that, you know, I think here, you know, we've been really trying to, and again, the conversation I think is going to be kind of helpful, but I think we've been, even though there's a lot of pieces that are changing, and I think we can try to assemble some of the predictions there. There's also like some pretty strong kind of attributes. I mean, there's this very strong street art or kind of mural line up there on the east side of Front, which I think is really great. Obviously, the International at the corner as a kind of destination, and then some things happening up on Front. So I think here we're really trying to draw out a couple of to really amplify some of the things that we see happening. So it might be helpful for me to share some of the imagery that we've been playing with. And you know, maybe actually I'm going to start here and go back to the other one, because I think this one, I mean, honestly, this photo is really awesome. I mean, that firehouse, the old firehouse is really cool with that tower. And so really, you know, we've talked a little bit about the potential for there to be street closures or occupation of streets with more program. And so I think one of the things that is kind of cool about this area is, you know, it does almost have, particularly with this almost like church tower in the background and potentially another building coming, will feel a little bit like an urban plaza, just naturally in its shape. And so, you know, I think our thought was the idea that this could be temporarily in some way shut, or that there's a way for this to become a little bit more sort of pedestrian oriented. There's a lot of area dedicated to cars and not that much traffic. So, you know, this idea that there's a place to sit and maybe some landscape happening that could kind of piggyback on things that are already happening. You know, this idea of light, you know, we've used light in a number of places. I think it'd be super cool to be able to light that tower, maybe working with that owner to think about like how to get that to feel, I mean, there is something a little bit European about the scale and the kind of enclosure of this little square, which we think, you know, could really be amplified. And you can see, and then maybe coming back, I just wanted to go in that direction because I think that one was a little easier to wrap your head around. And then I think here, there's a couple of things we wanted to talk about here. One is we've been talking a lot about the kind of cattle chute that is happening when construction happens in Fishtown these days. And honestly, like, you just almost want to avoid. And I think one of the things that's interesting about these two big parcels is there could be, you know, in the next couple of years, some real construction going on. This might be a place to really pilot a more thoughtful way of barricading the edge of a site, or making sure that pedestrians can move freely north to south, since there's a lot to do here. And I think as summer comes, you'll have that you know, traffic. So I mean, obviously that's event dependent, meaning that construction would need to happen for that to be triggered. But we're also, there's this really terrific little open corner here that we've noticed that you see that mural, which is a really cool one, that kind of razzle dazzle camouflage, is sort of set back. And I totally recognize that may be private space. Looks like that, I don't know if that person is on the call, but the building looks kind of cool and it looks like there's something going on in there. But there could be, whether it is opened or whether a gate gets opened and can be sort of sporadically programmed, whether even the vegetation can be sort of mended a little bit. But that corner feels interesting to us as an opportunity. You can kind of see here the sort of things that we're talking about. And maybe I think that might be our kind of initial sort of proposal. It's, I think, good to come back here now and you can kind of see some of these things I was just showing you in those photos, with that kind of green corner open and the mural gallery there to the bottom right, and then that pink zone here with the expanded sort of pedestrian landscape area. I think with that, we can open the floor to discussion and really just invite you guys to not only react to what's here, but to also like fill us in on challenges and opportunities of the corner and kind of doing business, and just thinking about things that were on, your minds as kind of ways to make things better.
Yeah, and just to start, by the way, great. We love the idea of that area right by the International, using that as sort of an open space to meet. We've walked that God knows how many times, and
Yeah.
I think that's a fairly easy lift that I would think, that most of our folks, both residents and stakeholders alike, would support, because you're not really and I think in some ways you would be making it a little safer there, instead of having the way the road goes like that. It's a little less confusing, but also opens up more space. So I really like that. I even like the idea of the construction look of making it a little nicer, the little cattle thing. That's something to think about. But curious to hear what our folks think, because just so everybody knows, this is our opportunity for you to give ideas, suggestions, which we're going to come back and incorporate before we present this to our stakeholders and the relevant, all of our neighborhood groups. So there's still going to be more, but we want to make sure we get the good concepts now. So either put them in the chat or unmute and ask a question.
I love I love the obviously the the space by the International, and the way it really.
I wonder why, Paul.
Yeah, no, it's really it's exciting for us, at the International, of course, and the potential for that. But I think the energy of that, firehouse building, it's great if you can actually, have a view of it. I mean, architecturally, keeps it really active in terms of being a visual part of the intersection. I think the owner, John Carr, would appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I think it could play really nicely with the idea of Roland's development of that site just north of us there. But he hopes to have like a really nice grocery store, like a special specialty grocery store kind of thing. And I think that could be a really great, kind of energy for that too. I mean, that I would think that maybe there's a real pedestrian feel to that type of store. And maybe even that space by the International could host like a weekly farmers market that I think would be nice with all three of the different interests there. But I think it's really cool.
Yeah. Paul, as you mentioned that, it does make me think about when that future, you guys have been using that site in interesting ways during the pandemic. I guess this street closure, as small as it is, could allow for like the record market or the mini flea, or to continue to happen in a scaled down way if a major development happens there, and can kind of retain some of that.
Yeah, it'd be great to see.
Paul, the one lot you're using now, you're going to keep that, right? Or
the
development too?
Sorry, yeah, the owl's going right by. I can't hear. But I'm sorry, Roland site, we're going to try to use that in the spring. It's as long as it's available to us, we'll take advantage of that for sure. And then the streetery, I mean, we love being there. I'd love to see that. I think the curb line needs to be reset because of different water department engineering problems. But I think it'd be a great opportunity to consider, like, how that curb line works for all these different ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It also seems like this one is an opportunity to potentially think about how all of these streeteries that popped up in the pandemic, can be best used going forward into the future, where the pandemic hopefully is receding now and is less of an issue. But I think everybody across the city has seen how great the streeteries can be, and the question of what's going to happen to all these supposedly temporary structures, I think, is a big one for the whole city at large to grapple with. This seems like a site where we might be able to do that, since that zone of the street is a little bit less contested in general, and feels like it might be an opportunity to make something a little bit more permanent there.
Agreed. And I know the city is very open, at least in our conversations, both with our council folks, with streets, to making those streetery concepts permanent, or at least the ones that want to keep them. Just Deb, for the reasons that you said, how popular they've become. And they do become part of the business and part of the neighborhood. So I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah. I do think people are going to realize how awesome they are at giving shade in August. I think we forget how darn hot and terrible it can be in August, right? And I think we're going to have all these nifty little shade structures out there probably.
Paul,
We're gonna find ways to
that have heated.
get the seats to be cold. Yeah.
Right. Can you guys figure out an air-conditioned bench?
Yeah, like put some ice buckets over there.
Well, I do. I mean, one of the things that the business vision is to have a more of a daytime identity as well as our evening thing. But
Yeah.
so I think that it'd be just great energy to have that streetery available to people throughout the day. Because I think Cecil will be more of the great connector. I mean, to me, I feel like it's a really strong connector, at least for cyclists, especially from Fishtown to Temple. I mean, it's a nice corridor.
Sure.
Yeah. No, you're right. And, because with that there's that, I mean, I've attended theater in that warehouse space, and like Fermentary Forum is there. And I don't know how the mini golf is doing, but like stateside, there is a really good pocket of energy to the west of this that would start to feel kind of invited, I think, which is cool. We were also, and this is a little bit, sorry about that. I just wanted to say, I think also being that whoever this developer, if it's Roland or whatever happens over here, like the idea that somehow like the building may not occupy that piece. I've been thinking a lot about that as I look at this, because, a really big building that necks this down to its narrowest point is going to feel very different than a building that just pulls back a little bit. And maybe there is a kind of like something that can happen on both sides. It's a big site, and I think one thing I would just think is that thinking carefully about how that corner works on that new development, I think could really affect how this intersection feels.
Is Roland on the call by any chance?
I asked him to show up, but I don't.
Me too.
Yeah. I mean, I think that could be. I mean, I'd love to ask Roland about what his thought for, like, maybe the place has prepared food thing. Maybe that could be a good kind of thing to have as plaza area, or just sort of a seating area outside of the.
I think it would be great. I think and especially right where you highlighted it, Brian, it's a perfect thing right by the corner.
Yeah.
So, it enhances safety as well. Well, we'll make sure we're going to see Roland tomorrow, Paul. So we'll tell him.
All right.
Any other questions, folks? We don't want to hog it all. Go ahead, Bill. You're muted. Bill, you need to unmute.
We still can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm
There
working.
we
How's
go.
that?
There you go.
Okay,
Good.
sorry. Usually when I hit the space bar, it temporary unmutes, but it didn't work this time. I just wanted to second the idea of how much I like the streeteries, both as a business owner, but also, just as a neighbor and a patron of them. But I think that the city, even just giving assurances that they exist through 2021, made a huge difference to us as business owners, that we actually invested in it and did what I would like to think is a really nice job with it, as opposed to just throwing some tents out there with, cinder blocks tied to strings or whatever, that we've seen around too. And that like the more the city can kind of give us some assurance that if we do a good job on these things, that they're not going to be just like pulled out from under us. It really makes a big difference to us.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. And we've been advocating from the very beginning. In fact, a colleague and myself worked very hard on helping write some of the drafts of what was ultimately passed, and we wrote it in a way that we wanted to make it easy to make this permanent. Our last conversation, in fact, was during one of these meetings. I forgot which one, where one of the street department reps said that they were very open to making this permanent. And that's certainly, for anyone who deals with the city, for them to be that open about it is very encouraging. And I think because they've worked and they've helped our restaurants and taverns and eateries survive, people like them. So when the nice weather comes or whatever, it's great to still have that, because our community is such that there's always activity outside. And I think it's a great way to keep that. And like you said, people have put significant amount of resources into doing them right, making them, you know, they look good, they're safe, they're sturdy. So there's something that they should be rewarded for. I agree.
Yeah.
Brian, can you flip to the picture that had sort of like the cattle chute thing?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I like that. I don't know how others feel about it. Like to try to even keep something like that on a more regular basis. I know we have other businesses there. I don't want to take travel away from anybody or anything like that, but I just think it looks nice and it kind of adds to the unique dimension of the intersection. I don't know how anybody else feels about it. Yeah, Paul.
I think, well, just in general, I think it's really important that we, try to keep the corridor wherever there's construction really active and safe for pedestrians. And, so I mean, this could be a good model for going forward to other areas where there's going to be, difficulty with having pedestrian flow and a development of a site. So it's cool.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's also potential here for this to become a more permanent,
That's
like
what I meant, Kat.
protected bike lane infrastructure.
Hmm.
Because I know also that portion of the corridor isn't supposed to have parking, but there is a problem with folks parking on the sidewalk on occasion. Maybe that could be a way to remedy that, as well as add some bike infrastructure, since Cecil B is such a great connector street.
Agree. Like that's what I was asking. I mean, I would wonder how people felt about something permanent like that there. Besides its uniqueness, I think there's a safety to it. And like Kay said, I mean, if you just see the condition of the sidewalk, you can see why, because people, especially when it's funny when it's bad weather, the people want to park under the L so they don't have to worry about the snow.
Right.
That's how they do it. So this could be a different way to look into it, but I like it.
Mhm.
I mean, I also think it's kind of cool with, the street art and the mural panels that happen along Front Street here, that this could almost be a more intimate kind of visual gallery. We're sort of like, if that can piggyback on a construction protection, that's cool, right? But I think it is kind of particularly relevant. And also, I mean, the construction thing, I mean, to be honest with you, and I'm sure you guys feel the same way as people that need sidewalks. I mean, Philly's got to be the biggest city with the sloppiest construction control anywhere, right? It's like, I mean, it's just really unbelievable. But, and of course, I think we can all say like, geez, it'd be nice if even just like the Jersey barriers were kept spaced out enough that a human being can walk through it, because they get hit and jumbled. But it might be that one of the reasons why we thought this was particularly relevant is if there is a world where both of those sites went under construction at the same time, which honestly, given what we've been through in the last couple of years, not unthinkable at all. There could be a year where pedestrian flow is just deeply impeded. And if we really made an effort in like special zones to say, hey, this can't be something we leave to how well the subcontractor closes the gate at night, let people through. And so that was also something we were thinking about, is this idea that maybe there's like a higher level. You have to be very selective, but this could be a point of construction over the next couple of years that's very impacted.
Yeah. And you're seeing it right now, Brian, like along stretches of Frankfurt. I mean, I feel like the other night we were walking and had to walk down the middle of Frankfurt just to get,
it happens all the
where
time.
we're going. It's happening all the time. It seems like it's a high level coordination thing as much as anything else, right, Mark? Like just something the bid could do really, really well by the neighborhood, to help with that coordination and making sure that the folks who are managing these construction sites get a little bit of support as well, to make these experiences decent for passersby.
Yeah, and listen, more is coming on Front Street, folks. So and that's great, because we love to see North Front Street being properly developed more with more commercial and residential. But with that comes this. So I think this is a great solution to that.
Can I just ask, how do you get your materials into the site with the barrack, with the tunnel built, which I like very much.
Yeah.
But how do you get access to the site if you're the builder?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd have to make an allowance for like an area. You'd have to plan with, I mean, there's a lot of expectations, like the contractor would have to plan ahead. I mean that with love, but like we're in this industry and we know that doesn't happen so much. But you would create a construction entrance, right? That's
Yeah.
I think so. I think there might be a spot, or this other
Well,
front that you're.
Some of these parcels, a lot of these parcels are large enough to have a rear access or an access from a side street anyway. That might be the preferred access point during the majority of the construction. And yes, of course, there might be a couple of moments when they need access under the L on Front Street, but that's not the best spot to access the site if they don't have to in any case, just simply because of the high traffic nature of that street. So yeah, it would need to get planned well in advance. Again, speaking to this issue of coordination as much as anything else.
Anyone else, especially for any of our folks that are right around this area, we want to hear from you.
Could I ask really quickly just what the idea behind the pathway graphic is? I don't remember if you guys explained that yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, I think what we were imagining is, for example, if that construction chute was improved, we were kind of linking, we were making a more aggressive sort of pedestrian wayfinding move to connect that with that enhanced street closure for the International. And I think really what we were just saying is, I think in some intersections we're being a little more aggressive about, like the Lehigh intersection, if you can imagine that. It's like being a pedestrian up there is kind of crazy. So I think things generally here are pretty good as they are, although that'd be a great thing for you guys to comment on if you feel like it is. But I think what we were thinking is if that construction thing happened, you'd want to be potentially, like if the big site were fenced off and the sidewalk was closed, which is probably very likely, you'd want to move people across to the chute.
Yeah, I think we were just we were thinking that could be a painted element on the ground plane, and actually also to connect to what Brian was saying, potentially connected to ground painted elements in that triangular zone at the intersection, which is sort of off to the left of this image. That could also become something that has a potential to be like an art project that a local artist could be involved with as well.
And if Marco, if you were asking like the specifics of that, so it looks like those are, as we focus on intersections and the different shapes of the intersections that we're going to incorporate into this design, looks like the design there is actually the different intersection emblems. Am I right, guys?
On the vertical panels in the chute, we're kind of using that as a bit of a placeholder graphic, where you might imagine that could be something that the bid controls, but also could be something that becomes a place for art or mural kind of elements to happen, depending on the appetite for that at the particular site.
Got it. Marco, you have anything else?
Yeah, actually, the other question I had, if you don't mind going back to the intersection graphic that shows the triangle space. I think just I'm representing South Kensington Community Partners here. And we've been doing some work with greening. So it's great to see you guys are thinking about that as well. I was wondering if there's been thought given to greening in more of like a tree pit kind of sense, where there's still some areas where I think the intersection could benefit from that. And also just wanted to put on everyone's radar that I believe there's tree pits on the north side of Cecil B. Moore, west of Hope, that we're going to be working in the spring on planting. So there'll be some more planted tree pits in the near future.
So like over in this area?
Exactly.
Okay.
Great. Yeah.
But we'd love to see it, continue further east than that and have those kind of more permanent greening infrastructure.
I mean, I would say one thing is almost certainly there's going to be a requirement for the building that goes
For
up
this
on
one,
that
yeah.
site to have those tree pits added as part of
Mhm.
their streets department approval for that, for a project of that scale along that edge. But yeah, I think it'd be great to have that, you know, look out for those opportunities wherever feasible. I think to date, we've been looking a little bit more at some lighter touch greening interventions, planters, things that can roll around and move, just simply because they're a lot faster and easier and quicker to implement and require a lot less, you know, red tape approvals. But those longer term greening elements are also really important to look out for wherever possible.
Yeah, and I think just I think that I was sort of thinking about that earlier, that, you know, the sort of kind of shorter term, more kind of like tactical, let's say, but like kind
Yeah.
of building off of these streeteries into something that's more substantial but still not permanent is, I think, a great way to, yeah, totally like build on the energy of the spot. And I agree that, you know, Cecil B. Moore already has kind of that energy further west, that kind of tying that all together is great. But thinking about how it can also sort of seed ideas and maybe even kind of initiate some infrastructure changes that will be permanent and kind of have that long-term value for neighbors, I think would really do a lot to kind of, you know, get people on board, get them excited about kind of how this area won't just sort of have temporary changes, but stuff that they can sort of see lasting longer.
Mhm.
And just so you know, Marco, the purpose of us doing this, and your points are good ones, is, you know, we're then going to take this plan and start bringing these into fruition so that they're there and not there for 6 months like a temporary thing. So, you know, that's why it's great to hear from everybody, so we could see how we can maximize and optimize those areas, because it's a great open space. It really is. And so those are all good points. Yeah. So yeah, we're going to be making these permanent.
Great. Yeah, no, I think it's a great plan. I'm excited.
How about you, John Geeting? You're always full of comments. Is he still there?
Hello. Hey, I'm here. No, I love it. I mean, I've been thinking about this for a while, actually. John, who owns the firehouse building, actually at one point let me climb up in the tower there to take an aerial shot of the intersection, which was pretty scary. I do not recommend anybody do that. It's actually a ladder that you have to like go from one to the next. But yeah, no, it's great. It's all great. You know, I'm hopeful that that it can happen. It's not in our territory, so I don't feel like we should you know, like weigh in officially, but as a frequent guest of the International, I support it and think it would look pretty cool. And yeah, I did make one comment just about the like construction site stuff. Like, I don't know what the policy is there, but like when 1405 Frankfurt and whatever like the Sonder one across the street was there, they had like both sidewalks closed, and you'd have to like walk in the car lane like in the middle of the street, and it was insane. They like it was dangerous. Like the cops actually should have like closed the street at that point and like diverted the traffic somewhere. So I don't know what we can do to like try to avoid something like that happening here, but like that seems.
Yeah, I think it's tough, because I think the reality of it, right, is that I don't think that anybody regulates it outside of Center City. It's very clear that in Center City they pay attention to these things, but the moment you're out of Center City, it's the Wild West. And I think that's really the key, right? Is like if somebody showed up and shut down the site or issued them a ticket, or I don't know if that really happens. I mean, Mark, maybe you know if you've seen that, but like I don't think the construction inspector, I don't know whose purview that would be. Would it be streets? Would it be L&I? But it just must be that nobody's saying anything, because I see it all the time. I'm regularly like moving to the other side of a street, or, you know, walking over ice around Jersey barriers with like link fences poking out at my ankles. I mean, it's kind of.
Well, luckily, folks, I'm going to put some folks on the spot. Our good friend Rich Martinez from Streets is on our call, and we love Rich.
Great.
He's always been so helpful.
Rich, I apologize in advance. I didn't see you were on the call, so I hope I didn't say anything that was.
That's why, so we do have folks, just so everybody knows, from SEPTA and from the Planning Commission here. So, you know, part of when we talk about these things is also to make sure that we actually can do them. So I was going to call on Rich anyway regarding closing that part of the street, but Rich, could you provide any guidance on what our folks were just talking about?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can. Thanks.
So the interesting thing, it does happen. It just happens to be that in Center City, we get a lot of 311 calls every time somebody does something. There's only 6 inspectors for the entire city. So it's if everybody thinks I got this large, massive workforce, we don't.
Sure.
We don't
Sure.
have enough people to manage
Yeah.
the right of way. We don't have enough people for the construction. And it's hard to keep, you know, contractors, developers are going to try to get away as much as they can because ultimately say is their bottom dollar. And a lot of them would say, I don't need the sidewalk closed, and we show up to a site and the sidewalk is closed. So it's not, you know, we depend on the plans that they give us, that they submit to us for us to review. We don't have the staff to keep up with the 1,000 construction projects going on all at once within the city of Philadelphia. So we do depend heavily on 311 to tell us where to go. Streeteries have actually taxed us to the extreme with the legal and the illegal streeteries that we have. But we do our best, and they do get fined. It's a $25 fine, so you can laugh at that. So even if I catch you, I give you $25. Who gives a shit when you're building when you're selling condos at $1.5 million each one?
I mean, parking tickets are worse.
Yeah, it's I mean, we try to do the best we can. We try, you know, we're working with Elle and I right now to try to see we can do things where if we put CVNs during construction, then the certificate of occupancies will be held. But council's reluctant to give us that authority. Where then, I mean, if I held somebody's certificate of occupancy, you would definitely do what I tell you to do.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a way for the bid to have some kind of a carrot program rather than a stick approach. Meaning like, you know, for developers who are working within the corridors, you know, of the bid's purview, you know, maybe there's a small grant that gets levied for those who are working to, you know, get the sidewalks to remain more open or to, you know, create these chutes, or maybe there's a way of incentivizing it, in other words, rather than punishing people who aren't doing it right.
And yes, though I don't know that the city would ever turn over enforcement
Yeah,
to
we would.
us, or
No,
can't
not at
turn
all.
over-
It wouldn't help with enforcement, but it just might help with people, you know, doing something that.
here's what I would say to anybody that's listening, of our stakeholders: if everybody pays their assessments like they should, we can do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I'd also,
Yeah, if we had like called you and said, hey, like both the sidewalks are closed for like months on end, like would you have shut down Frankfurt Ave to car traffic, or like what would you have done? Like the way
No,
that
we would tell them to, we would either tell them to put in a pedestrian cattle chute, which is probably what they had to submit with concrete barriers, which they
Mhm.
probably didn't do.
Mhm.
Or we would say cease and desist. So we would issue a cease and desist and close them down.
yeah.
We've done that. I have literally 10 houses right now within Philadelphia that the developer started building without permits. He got them all the way up, and we hit cease and desist before he was able to wrap them. And they've been sitting like that for 9 months. So I know what's going to happen. He's going to have to tear them down because that wood's rotting away. So you want to screw with me? I'm going to screw with you, and your bottom dollar is I'll hit a cease and desist when it's going to hit you the most.
Well, you know, I mean, one thing I will say, taking a cue from Richard, which I appreciate, is as much as I was just bitching and moaning about some of the construction conditions, I never called 311. So I think basically what Richard just said is like, call 311. And I think that's good advice. I think you're right. I mean, you know, if it's an issue, we can all be better at just giving a ring and saying, hey, like, I can't walk up my street.
Or, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but what we've also encouraged folks to do is call us, because we'll try to reach out
Yeah,
to
yeah,
first, or if not, and then if we don't get cooperation, we do turn it in, because ultimately we have to have people safely going. Quick question, Rich, while I have you there, for the closing of that portion of the street where we want people outside, is that just something as simple as a council ordinance and going through that process?
I'm sorry, you're talking about the triangle?
Yeah, the triangle, if we wanted to close that one part of the traffic of the street.
It would be a purchasing of the street, but I don't know if we would do it. But it's one of the things we're having a discussion with council on. We are currently allowing structures in the right of way with a permit, but without a fee, which goes against both federal and state law.
Nice.
I'm not a lawyer, Mark. I just got to enforce the laws given to me.
I am, and I still don't know. But okay, so because that's the thing, we all love this concept. We just want to be able to make sure that we're actually able to do this, especially at a place where, if you could, Brian, if you could put that picture back up of it.
yeah. Hold on a second.
I mean, Mark, we've done pet plazas where
There you go.
we've done pet plazas kind of like that, where the city still owns the property, but we created green space, things like that. Issue being here is if you're going to use it to make a profit.
All right, so as when we get to that portion, then I'll be calling you. I have a feeling I'll be calling you before then, but for this, we'll do that. But because I think this is something everybody sort of favors, and it doesn't take away from the traffic flow, and it does help the area there. Thanks, Rich.
I'm not disagreeing, but as a guy who puts all these streeteries and permits them, I've also gotten the other side of, I'm also removing parking from the street in areas where people are looking for parking.
Oh, I hear you. Well, we're working on that too, but that was another meeting. We missed you on Friday, Rich, by the way.
I was sleeping, Mark. I worked 36 straight hours.
I know. We already figured it was from the storm, but you have so many fans. They were all asking where you were.
Oh, I thought it was because I canceled trash on Friday and people were calling me at home. How come I wasn't picking up trash?
Oh, we appreciate the time. We also have Wendy from SEPTA here. Wendy, is there any things we need to know from a SEPTA perspective from the things you've seen here?
Sorry, trying to unmute.
That's okay.
As long as there's no impediment to service, I don't foresee anything being a problem. The only thing though is that we're on the front end of doing the CBNR, the Complete Bus Network Renewal Project. And that is exactly what it says. We will be revamping the entire bus network for not just Philadelphia, but the other 4 counties we serve. Does that mean it's going to impact? Does it mean we're going to have bus service where we currently don't? We don't know. So that's the only item I see that could potentially, change. We're changing service and could potentially, have impact on what's being proposed here. Again, we're just the contract consultant just came on board on February 1st. And so I think we have it's a 2-year project, 3-year project. Before there's any implementation of whatever the changes are, there will be tons of community outreach beforehand. So, expect to hear from us again when we get to that point. But that's the only thing I could foresee that would be an impact.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks for being so involved with us as you have been.
Sure.
I don't want to put him on the spot. Greg Waldman from Planning is on. Greg, I know you're just seeing this for the first time. Anything that jumps out at you, good, bad, or things to look out for from a planning commission standpoint?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me to this, Mark. This area is actually in the lower North District, which the community planner for that is Steve Fishtown. So I don't want to kind of speak for him, and I'm not as familiar with that plan and district plan, and I'm just started my role about a month ago, a little more than a month ago for River Ward. So I would defer to Rich as far as the logistics for the street. From like a planning perspective, like not speaking of like, regulations, but this does look great. As long as like, parking and traffic flow and the neighbors on Turner Street are, they have an opportunity to weigh in, then yeah. I would say, that from like from what everyone has mentioned as far as like this area that's in the picture right now, it's definitely like would bring a lot of like whether or not it is in use for the commercial establishment or just for public seating. I think that it's just kind of like a would bring vibrancy to the area, whether like the traffic, even like the roadway here, like as we are looking at like areas just like your group is looking at like areas with excess roadway. I think that this is kind of like some appropriate measures that are being implemented for kind of reclaiming reclaiming space that's excess space for cars for public use. So
Thanks, Greg.
I don't have anything to kind of add as far as like the city planning commission's like policy standpoint for this area, and I would definitely if this is available digitally, I can pass it along to Dave Fishtown.
Thank you much. Thanks for everything. Well, we're getting towards the end. I want to, if there's a last round of questions, and we'll let Brian and Deb sum up. Having heard none, Brian and Deb, sum up. And team, forgive me.
And team. Deb, you have anything to say here?
The closer, Deb.
Yeah, no, not in particular. I mean, I think we're really excited about all of these workshops and the way they're playing out, and we're going to be looking to kind of wrap some of the lessons learned, as Mark said, into a document that is going to be made public at some point relatively soon now, and also looking forward to playing out some of these ideas across the broader neighborhood throughout other intersections, and getting some working groups together at some of the other intersections as well, to move this larger plan forward. So we really appreciate everybody's time, and also welcome any additional feedback coming from folks on the call or others. If you know anybody who owns a business or a property adjacent to any of the intersections we've been talking about that wants to reach out, I think those messages can go to Mark, and they'll make their way to Brian and I, and we'll be looking at those as we develop the final plan.
Thank you, guys, and thanks, Deb. That if anybody has any Any thoughts after we get done? Certainly you can email me, Mark, M-A-R-C, at fishtownbid.org, or K Anderson, K-A-E, at fishtownbid.org. And we're happy to kind of parse those through and get those out. Want to thank the folks at ISA. Great job as always. Want to thank all of you for being on it. I want to thank Wendy from SEPTA, Rich from Streets, Greg from Planning for taking the time today, and for Rich for being awake for us. We give you a nice, sunny, easy day today. So with that,
Not really, Mark. We're doing potholes now.
I'm going to save this recording.
Never stop.
I'm going to make up Rich Martinez's greatest hits.
No, I just, there's no winning with, it's a slow media day when they want to talk about potholes and there's still snow in the ground.
We just have an hour with him. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for being part of this. And we look forward to sharing the upcoming product with everyone. Have a great day. Stay safe.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.